Aidan. And remember, how are we going to get the media on our side?
We've got 1.2 million UK citizens living in the EU, and they don't want to have to choose in many cases between their native country and their adopted country. So to defend their interest, I proposed that we create a dual passport, a single passport that would allow them to be both UK citizens and citizens of the country where they're living now. I knew that the media would pick up on this. And when I explained this policy in the Yorkshire hustings, the media reported me as being in favour of immigration. Now, this is nothing to do with immigration. This is to do with existing citizens of Britain and also European citizens who are bound to get British passports in the end anyway. So this was a calculated policy to change our image in the media and defend British citizens. We just need to think about what we are doing with the media. Thank you.
Thank you. Neville.
On this point, actually, this is where John Rhys-Evans stands head and shoulders above everyone. In fact, John Rhys-Evans is the only candidate from day one, and when he ran previously, spoke about direct democracy. And there are 5 pillars to this, to our direct democracy, and I'm just going to go through them very quickly. UKIP Connect, which identifies our talent within the party. UKIP Direct, that harnesses that talent. UKIP Local, that identifies local issues where we meet people at their point of need. And UKIP Media. UKIP Media is where we take back control of our messaging. John is the only candidate who I can tell you now has a media organisation. John,
That's an untruth.
It's not true.
John is one who actually is put on DVDs, and he's made. You could go on YouTube and you could see the work that John Rhys-Evans has done already.
Thank you very much, Neville.
And we
Marie.
provide training for those who want to do the media as well. Thank you very much.
I believe the question was about our voting system.
No.
Media.
No.
Media.
How do we
Which question was about? Have we answered the question about the voting system? Because I had
Media.
Hold on media message.
Media message.
two-party hold on media message. Okay. No, fair enough. Look, key is not being afraid of the media. This party is far too frightened of the media. We allow what papers will or will not say about us to dictate what we say and what policies we have. We have to stop this. We must be a voice against mass immigration. I'm hearing voices along this panel saying that we want to appear pro-immigration. No, we don't. We will lose our core vote. We will lose our core vote. There is uniformity across the political parties in this country on immigration. We must be the only one, because it affects everything. It affects everything. It affects the NHS, it affects schools, it affects police, absolutely everything. It has to be central to our message. And as we'll be the only ones saying it, of course the media will pay attention to us. Of course they will. We must stop being afraid of the media. They are not our electorate, the voters are.
Thank you. Peter.
Ladies and gentlemen, it isn't a two-party hold. It's basically a left-wing hold. Let's be honest about this, right? First of all, as a party, we want to scrap the licence fee of the BBC. That is one thing that's very, very important. What I say here, I'm the only candidate here who's been up against Andrew Neil, who's been up against Andrew Marr, who's been on Question Time, and all the rest of it. The only one who's done all of them, right? And the fact is, they are never going to change in their hostility to us.
Correct.
So what I would say to you, therefore, is that we have to develop our own media. We have 500,000 faces, likes on Facebook. We need 2 shows a week, just like Trump has just done in America. He bypassed all the mainstream media. He got his message out. We must do this. Why haven't we done it before?
Yes,
I would
why
set up
haven't
a
you done
unit
it before, Peter?
specifically for that thing? Sorry?
Thank you very much. Gentleman at the back. Yes. Yep, you. No, you. The one who's standing up.
I'd just like to ask each one of you, what's the one thing you would change that is blighting our country at the moment?
Peter,
The one thing,
that is blighting our country at the moment, what would you change?
So I would say that in terms of long-term problem, without question, it is the unbelievably historic levels of migration that this country has gotten used to, or rather should I say is being normalised as being what we should expect. And I think that what we're seeing now, despite a slight drop recently, is a number, the city the size of Hull, coming into this country every year. What we have got to do, because this issue is being completely sidelined, it's being kicked into the long grass, and we have got to reclaim this issue. This is our issue. And no, hang on. And also I would like to say to you that it is just also, it's about the way our communities are changing. It is not just about the economics.
Thank you.
I actually agree with Peter on that. Immigration is a massive issue. Another one, though, and this gets right down to where people's streets and their towns, is crime and law and order. Who is actually talking about restoring law and order in this country? I don't hear it. I really don't hear it. The other parties are too politically correct to go after it. I want us to reverse the changes that came from the Macpherson inquiry after the murder of Stephen Lawrence. I want us to be the only party, and we will be the only party, with the guts to say the Macpherson inquiry was wrong, and we will put it into reverse. We will get rid of racialised, politicised policing. We will stop this nonsense of putting tweeters in jail and leaving rapists on the street. This is a start in this country.
Actually, quite similarly, I believe that policing, we need to give police back the powers that they deserve. As I said before, we can't have a two-tier system in this country. That is making people frightened, is causing a lot of unrest in communities up and down the country as well. I think it's vital for us that there is even-handed policing, and that the policing is for all, not a two-tier policing system. The political correctness that we have currently in this country, that's been mentioned, I know, by many on this panel today, is something we must get rid of.
Thank you.
Okay.
Aidan.
I think we're blighted by the fact that we have accepted that we are weak, that we will not stand on our own 2 feet, we will not pay our way in the world. This is why I have talked partly about welfare. I think that dignity and pride and dreams coming true are a result of opportunity and success, and these are the things that I want our country to encapsulate more than any other in the world.
Thank you. Marion, and remember the one thing that you would change.
Yes, I would actually, if the NHS is the best service in the world, unfortunately it's become a political football, and it's become a political football in many ways, and one of those of course is not training enough nurses, having university trained nurses instead of back on the wards, and the knock-on effect of that is that we haven't got enough nurses on the wards. We're bringing them in from other countries where English is their second language, and it affects everyone here. Everyone knows what it's like trying to get a placement for an operation, to see your doctor. If we had more nurses trained, basically that would overcome all of that.
Thank you.
Even care in the community.
Thank you. David.
My very first election for UKIP was in 2015 in the general election, and I stood in a seat called Camberwell and Peckham in South London, and the incumbent in that seat is Harriet Harman. So I had a lot of fun there. One of the worst things that's ever happened to this country, one of the worst pieces of legislation, is the Equalities Act 2010. Some of it's good because it incorporates all of the good laws that we had before. But Section 149 of the Equalities Act is called the Public Sector Equalities Duty. And what it puts into law is a requirement to give due regard to people with protected characteristics. So it shouldn't be the Equalities Act, it's the Inequalities Act. It allows positive affirmative action.
So you
and
would
it allows,
repeal that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Jane, thank you.
Again, I'm going to talk about migration. Basically, we need to leave the EU to control the situation with migration, but for one reason that sticks out in my mind over recent events over the last few months. We are actually under quite a large terrorist threat in this country. It's been the highest that it's ever been nationally. You can speak to all the security bodies and they will tell you that it's the highest alert we've ever had. To do that, we have to control our borders. To do that, we have to be able to vet who comes in and out of this country. To do that, to keep us safe, we need to be able to come out of the European Court for Human Rights.
Thank you.
We have to be known to deport known terrorists and hate preachers
Thank
as
you.
well. We've got to
David.
get a grip and control of the country.
Well, the one thing I would change, and I'm sure Henry would as well, is, and I have to take a little bit of license here because I'm assuming we have the means and the authority to do that, but I would go back to 1997 and the immigration that we have suffered over the last 20 years will not have happened. Simple as that. We do have to get a grip of it. It is a major, major issue. But as the word change is in the question, I think I probably ought to mention, and it must be blindingly obvious to you all, that if you re-elect people to positions of power and authority in this party that already hold positions of power and authority in this party, nothing will change.
Thank you. You with the red bit round your neck. Yeah, that one, yes, you. Sorry.
Good evening all. David Morland, I'm the chairman of Broadland in Norfolk. I stood this year, or last year, so I was the Police and Crime Commissioner for Norfolk, and I'm also an ex-Scotland Yard detective. So good evening to you all, and welcome here. A question, it's a two-pronged question. First of all, are you aware, no doubt you are, that because of us, we won the referendum last year. If it wasn't for us, there wouldn't be that situation. I know from a very, very reliable source that about 2 weeks after that election, there was a joint meeting of the senior political parties deciding, oh dear, look what UKIP have done. We never in a million years thought we were going to lose this referendum. And we have been the subject to a confined or united effort, joint with the parties and the media, to get rid of us. Now, they've done very, very well. You know, they've turned the public against us, even turned our party members against us. But today, the British public are now waking up to the fact that we were the party that told the truth. We were the party that... So what I'm saying to you is, do you agree with me that A, we should have experts, spokesmen in every individual subject, be it police, be it schooling, whatever, and if need be, which one of you ever gets elected as a leader, if the British public turn around and say, we want Nigel back, are you prepared to stand down and let him back in?
David.
Yes, I'm aware of our influence on the referendum, and having stood out on street stalls and campaigned to do that, it was a spectacular result. And I'm also aware of the fact that the government had no idea that we would win it. It seemed self-evident that your spokesman ought to be familiar and conversant with the subject that they are speaking about. We have a huge amount of talent within the party from which to draw this kind of experience. We don't necessarily need to go outside, but just offering spokespeople's roles to your mates doesn't cut it. That's what we need to do.
Thank you. Jane?
Yeah, I totally agree with you that we've got to make sure that our policy groups and the head of those groups and the spokespeople of those groups have access to the grassroots membership. That is very, very important, and you work together. What I will just tackle you on one thing you just said. Spokespeople have got to get in the media. You've all been talking about the fact that UKIP has a problem getting in the media. Going back to Nigel Farage's famous words, if the media turn around and say, who are you? They aren't going to put you on the television. You have to have a media team behind you. I've got one of the best media teams in the whole country behind me, and we still struggle to get the coverage that we need to do for Yorkshire and North Lincolnshire. So if we're struggling with the best, if you put somebody on who hasn't got that sort of backing, that they're not going to go anywhere.
Thank you, Jane.
So you've got to be professional.
David.
Yeah. I think ultimately we've got to be a party that wants to get into government. And if you are serious about that, you've got to have spokesmen in every area to shadow the positions in the cabinet and the wider government. So I would look to appoint a very large spokesman team with a smaller cabinet, but with spokesmen in every area, like social care, like disability, and so on. And I would keep some people who are there, but I would have some new people as well, because there's so much talent in the party that is unrecognised. And so as I go around the country, I meet some fantastic people, who are experts in their field, and I would want to use as much of that as I can.
Thank you.
Okay.
Marion.
Well, getting back to your question, yes, we need people who are experts in the policies, and what I would like to see is grassroots members putting themselves forward for these positions.
Yeah.
I would like to see it going out to everyone to invite them to put themselves forward for, to be spokesperson of each of the policies that we've got, and to add more. I also want to see policy coming on from grassroots. I do have a way that I want to see that work. I've already tried to put it to the NEC, but let's just have policy ongoing with grassroots members and the policy spokesperson being those individuals. As you say, we do have a lot of talent in this party.
Thank you.
The last question, I don't think anyone answered that one yet, have they? Will you stand down if Nigel wants to come back? I think I'd say yes to that one.
Yeah.
I think whether we wanted to stand down or not, all of us would have to honestly admit that he's a better politician than we are. And I would stand down for Nigel Farage. I think he would do a great job of rebuilding the party if he wanted to. I'm not sure that Nigel Farage is the person who would take us from 25% to 50% of the electorate, but who cares, because we're on 1.8 now. So that's my answer to your question. I would welcome him back as we are now. On the spokesman front, at the moment, a lot of our spokesmen are salaried. They're MEPs, they're councillors. We're going to lose our MEPs, we're going to lose our councillors. I like Marion's idea of addressing all of the membership and inviting them to apply for spokesmanships. I'm not suggesting that any of them should be paid, but I think we should offer them expenses, maybe $3,000 a year. We could finance 20 of those by cutting the chairman's salary to $40,000.
Thank you, Aidan.
Yeah. This is actually number one in the 5 pillars John has, in fact, is developing our own talent from within the party. I think that's vital. Too often, we've had people who've used this party to further their own ambitions, and we know who they are. We want people who have been around for some while, who have worked in the field, and they have talent. And we believe with training, we can develop our spokesman. And by the way, at the top end of this, my opening, what did I say about Nigel? If you remember, at the very beginning, John Rhys-Evans has said, with all due respect, we would step aside for Nigel to come back. But there is a but with that. For any of you who follow football, and I hope there's a few of you who do, Alex Ferguson left Manchester United. It left a void. Then you had David Moyes. He fell. And then you had Van Gaal, what his name is. He fell. He fell. And now you're on the third.
Yeah,
There's a similarity to that.
And the chairman,
There's a similarity.
And the chairman is not a football supporter.
Now I've been extremely carefully listening to every question. I'll start with how you started. You asked us if we were aware that UKIP got us out of the EU. Absolutely. None of this would have happened without UKIP. A couple of decades ago, it would have deemed impossible that Britain would get out of the EU. UKIP did this completely and deserves all the credit for it because they were brave and able and willing to stand outside the uniformity. As for spokespeople, to me it's completely obvious that you should have someone with experience in an area to talk about it. You can learn things, you can read things, you can memorise scripts, but you'll never really know it until you've experienced it. To me, this is obvious. Of course we need people with a bit of media savvy, but we don't need celebrities. We need solid people who know what they're doing. In fact, the last thing we need is celebrities.
And the last part of the question?
The last part of the question, well look, I've heard you very clearly. You said if the country wanted Nigel back, would we stand down? Well, if the country wanted Nigel back, then I would have failed as a leader, so absolutely.
Peter.
Well, let's remember, I think first of all, in terms of, can I just go to the Nigel point first? I think we all would, but he's not coming back. And I think that the thing is that we've got to make sure that we go on as a party. And I think that's the crucial thing. If we keep on having this thing, oh, well, he might come back one day, we won't grow up. We've got to grow up. And on the spokesman point, I would say, no, I disagree with the rest of the panel. I've been a spokesman for 4 years, whatever. Most of you here don't know who most of our spokespeople are. You never see them. I've never met some of them. I think we need a smaller, crack team of people who are really, really good. And they should be experts, but the fact is I do not think there's anything to be gained from having about 22, 23 spokesmen. It just doesn't really do us any good. It hasn't done us. We've got to do a different thing.
Thank you very much, Peter. Stuart.